obviously a lot of controversy with Texas A&M and Johnny Manziel. How is he going to go against the NCAA and Jay Billis? Wow, what has he done to level the playing field for college athletes? Alex Rodriguez hits his first home run today. Thoughts about that, of course. How baseball is doing halfway through the month of August. These races are some of the best that I've ever seen in the last couple of years. And if it wasn't for the PED stories, it'd be fantastic. Obviously, some NFL preseason, we'll talk about that. And finally, we'll talk about the PGA Championship that just ended. So obviously, before I get started, I visited one of my friends this weekend, Matt in Virginia, and this morning we watched the show on ESPN, again, with great programming, and on the guide I saw that fantasy football was going to be up next, and I thought to myself that we have really gotten to the point where fantasy football is becoming such a show. It's unbelievable. There's so many books out there. There are magazines you can buy on newsstands. Fantasy football has just gotten to a whole nother level. And Matt's just saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna do another fantasy mock draft." Obviously preparing for his leagues, and I just chuckle at that sometimes. It's fascinating, the world of fantasy sports. I mean, obviously, if you have read the book by Matthew Berry, who again, great guy, from what I know, and he seems to have his knowledge in fantasy sports, that there are leagues in the country that have a lot of stakes riding on fantasy football. You know, again, money, of course, and even if there's a tattoo league. So in the middle of Nebraska, there's a fantasy football tattoo league where the loser has to get a tattoo picked by the winner. So there's a guy in Nebraska with a Justin Bieber tattoo on his back and hashtag YOLO swag on top of it. It's unbelievable. It's one of those things where, again, I started playing fantasy football. I mean, I've grew up in this age where technology's been so prominent and so easily accessible. So I started playing, I guess, my freshman year in high school, so a little while ago. And that was at the point where I was just starting to learn about football. I guess starting to learn about the quarterbacks and, you know, who's good and who's not and that kind of thing. And then over the years, it's gotten a little more competitive. I mean, I've wanted to win. And it's honestly very fascinating, the dynamic of fantasy sports and how I guess most people have a favorite NFL team, but at the same time, they might be playing somebody who's playing their team this week, and sometimes that conflicts with how do you root for them. Like, for example, I'm a Bills fan, but let's say I do draft Tom Brady, and he's playing the Bills. Yeah, would I want him to throw 5 touchdowns? Absolutely. But really? I mean, if Brady throws 5 touchdowns, there's no way the Bills are going to win. Conflict of interest. And sometimes it's just one of the funniest things to watch. But hey, that's fantasy sports, and that's the world we live in today. All right, let's get right to it. Starting off with college football, and of course, as always, Texas A&M's Johnny Manziel gets in trouble again, but this time, it's actually a little more serious than Twitter photos of him out on the town. Last week, the NCAA found out through numerous sources that Johnny Manziel signed autographs for money. Now, obviously this has brought a lot of controversy with the fact that it's his name. Now, I get it. College athletics, you pretty much sign your likeness away and your images to a degree. But then again, with the lawsuit of Ed O'Bannon versus the NCAA, where athletes are not profiting, not being able to get money from the NCAA for the use of their likeness and their images, which honestly is ridiculous. I mean, personally, this is what I view. I mean, obviously, people have said athletes shouldn't make... They made the argument that college athletes shouldn't make money because, you know what, you're getting a free education which is usually, for a big-time program, roughly maybe $40,000-$50,000 a year, and you get free room and board, you have a free to access to all these facilities where you can get a great education, and also stay in the greatest shape. Again, a lot of great athletic departments, athletic facilities. So that's one side of the argument. The other side is that, hey, these athletes are making universities millions upon millions of dollars. I mean, Texas A&M, after this past season, upgraded their stadium. They're making it bigger, and it's already pretty big as is. They said it's going to fit roughly 110,000 people. That's insane. And you know why? The only reason that they're doing that? Johnny Manziel. Now, I feel that there should be a middle ground. Do I think athletes should make money in college? No. Strictly because, at the end of the day, you are getting a free education. Believe me, I went to a college where it wasn't the cheapest in the world, and while I wasn't a big-time athlete, I was an athlete, but I didn't get paid. And in my level, there wasn't technically athletic scholarships. Would it have been nice to get an athletic scholarship at that level? Absolutely. But I think personally, this is just my view, not speaking for anybody else. The NCAA makes so much money. Why not start a fund that, again, a lot of the NCAA problems that they have are the use of their likeness and their images. So with that in mind, they create a lot of games. Like, obviously, NCAA college football is the main one. Now, the fact that they use their names, they should have a fund where student athletes, it's pretty much like after they graduate or upon when they move to the NFL, which I would say maybe 10% of college football really has a legitimate chance of making it. The other 90%, probably going to graduate 3-4 years and just get their degree and go about their way. The NCAA should have a little fund where student athletes, if they use their likeness and images, should get a little bit of that, a portion of that. Because you know what? You're making a lot of money as is. How much money do you really need? And one of the problems in this lawsuit for the NCAA, it's becoming a bigger issue, and it became more evident this week when Jay Billis, one of the college basketball analysts on ESPN, posted on Twitter. Again, if he went to look on the NCAA website, and you typed in Manziel. What do you find? The number 2, obviously Johnny Manziel's jersey, and on the back it says football, as in Johnny Football. I think that's ridiculous that the NCAA is allowed to sell their jerseys. I mean, if it's their own college, absolutely. I mean, look, that's what they represent. But the NCAA has no play here. And the funniest thing that I saw this week, I mean, Jay Billis did this with other jerseys. Jadeveon Clowney was another one. If you look on the NCAA website, you can find an autographed Reggie Bush photo from one of his bowl games while he was at USC. Now, if you remember a couple years ago, Reggie Bush was investigated by the NCAA upon similar allegations that he received money from an agent for things like that in signing autographs. I think that's hysterical. The NCAA pretty much banished Reggie Bush, and he had to give back his Heisman Trophy. Now, the NCAA selling an autographed Reggie Bush photos is like an aquarium selling a fish sandwich. It really is. It's so wrong on so many levels, and it just blows my mind that the NCAA thinks that they have that kind of power. And honestly, if the NCAA is looking more and more like they're going to lose this lawsuit, and if they do, it's pretty much going to destroy the government that is the NCAA. But let's go back to Johnny Manziel. Apparently, 3 brokers say that he accepted cash for these autographs. The problem is, most of these dealers usually just go in cash, because usually these are people that are not, the normal type of autograph collectors, autograph brokers. They're really different, shady people. And when you deal just in cash, obviously, the higher end of autograph dealers know that college athletes are not allowed to sign for money. They're not allowed to sign autographs for money. The problem that the NCAA is going to have is, how are you going to trace the cash? I think Johnny Manziel is smarter than that. I don't think he's going to deposit $7,500 in his bank account the day after. Really? But I think he's pretty dumb in the fact that this came out as is. I mean, he's pretty much guilty in my eyes. But if the NCAA finds this, yeah, I think he's going to be suspended. If this is all true, again, 3 brokers have already come out and said this. But if the NCAA finds the cash trail and can pin it back to Johnny Manziel, he's going to be suspended for the year. And that's probably going to be the highest rise and fall that I probably have ever seen in college athletics since maybe SMU. And SMU got the death penalty back in the 80s. I mean, that's of astronomical proportions, because honestly, if Manziel's suspended, Texas A&M has no chance. They have no chance against Alabama at September 14th in College Station. No way. No way. But we'll see how that happens. I mean, obviously, with the case down with the University of Miami Hurricanes, it's been 3 years. It's been 3 years since all these allegations against the University of Miami came out, and nothing's being done about it at all. So they have not heard back from them yet. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, the NCAA is not the speediest organization in the world, but there's no way. I highly doubt Texas A&M or the NCAA will find Johnny Manziel's cash trail. I mean, they got 3 weeks. And realistically, if he does get suspended, maybe for 2 games, because there's no way he's going to miss the Alabama game. The chances that I give the NCAA of finding the cash trail are maybe 10%. Maybe. 10% is just a gift. Really? And realistically, maybe like 5%. It's just an awful situation. Both sides are obviously wrong. And again, I don't think if Johnny Manziel took this money, he's probably the dumbest college football player on the face of the planet. So, and obviously people are comparing him to Terrell Pryor of a couple years ago. Now, if you remember, Terrell Pryor got a 5-game suspension for selling jerseys, selling his autograph with jerseys, and he got eventually kicked off the team, moved to the NFL. Now he plays with the Raiders. The problem in that situation, obviously people are comparing them. The problem in that situation is that Terrell Pryor stole gear out of the NFL locker room, or the Ohio State locker room. So it's not his property. It's the property of Ohio State, which is why he got suspended for that many games. So again, I mean, obviously the character that is most shady in this is quote-unquote Uncle Nate Fitch, who is Johnny Manziel's personal assistant. Again, I don't know how this is going to turn out. It's going to be very interesting to watch. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, Johnny Manziel knows that as a big-time athlete, that is the number one rule